And welcome you on into another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It's Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Balla here to give you the latest in the world of sports. Mitch, good to be back with you for our second episode this week, man. We have both. I got on your case for the fashion choice you made this afternoon, but I have no room to talk because you are wearing a Christmas sweater in the start of February. It's a Harambe in memoriam sweater.
Yes.
I'm fascinated by it. You said it was cold coming into today, even though we're both indoors. But what was the thinking of, like, you saw of all the hoodies and crew necks you probably had in your house? What was the choice to go with the in memoriam of the unfortunately slain gorilla?
I just think that people tend to forget about that he was, taken from us too soon in 2016. I felt that Harambe deserved some recognition here. I don't think he had made an appearance yet in any of my wardrobe attire yet. And it is cold. I mean, looking at the temperature right now, it's 22 degrees, so it's chilly. So sweater, obviously, keep you warm, even if I am inside. But yeah, always here for Harambe. Always want to make sure people remember Harambe.
That's fair. It's sunny out here today too, which is fascinating, even though it's so cold. But yeah, Harambe, obviously the Cincinnati Zoo thing. You ever see those people online who are like, "Oh, the world changed when Harambe"? I hate people who do. I know it's the big freaking joke, but that was because that was the effect of a time where, like, especially with social media, people were able to really air out their I guess if you live in America, first world problems, so to say, getting angry over a gorilla that got mixed up with a kid falling into a thing. And I'm not going to even get into that because I have no room to talk today.
You don't want to. I'll get going on it, Mitch.
I have a Cleveland shirt on today, but I have a hat here that, Mitch, I was in Lids the other day. Not the one you're thinking of. I'll tell you off camera where I was. But I saw this hat in the store and I'm like, oh, sweet. That's a really cool looking baseball logo cap. I could get that. It was for like a good price. And then I go to work the other day in Cleveland and they're like, oh man, you got a White Sox hat on.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, what? And they go, yeah, it's the White Sox logo. You didn't notice? It's the ones they wear at the throwbacks. And I looked it up. Sure enough, it's exactly the same one. But they do the thing that I think I talked about it with you. They mixed up the colors and they've done that before to where we don't know. I couldn't tell the differentiating between the throwbacks where, like, for example, you see the block socks logo that they have. They usually see that in red, white, and blue, like in the 80s. They've been doing that now with the black and white colors that we usually see from the modern logo, which is like that script socks that we see on the uniforms. And I should have realized that because right next to this hat in the store, I'm not kidding you, was a black hat that said socks in the script. I should have known better. But because, with umpiring, I could maybe at least get away with something that looks like this. It's more so an everyday hat for me now. Not every day, but I'm probably going to wear this a little more often just because it's more nondescript than if I were to go to another place and wear like a block C Cleveland cap or something that would make me stand out a little bit more. Granted, if you know Chicago, then I'm going to maybe stand out even more so.
Well, folks, I think it's just safe to say we know who Mitch thinks is going to win the American League Central this year.
Didn't say that. Didn't say that.
You did not say it.
I mean, we don't know what's going to happen this year. At this point last year, I wouldn't have said that the Cleveland Guardians were going to end up winning the division by multiple games to the point where it got embarrassing for the White Sox and the Twins. But that's neither here nor there. We both made the choices we made, and the biggest thing is that we both got here in front of behind the microphones, in front of the camera here to give you guys the latest in the sporting world. Obviously, you're listening probably here on YouTube. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. You can also go to our podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And of course, you go to BigTimeSportsOhio.com. You find our articles there. I've been cranking out a whole bunch of articles this morning, in fact, and we'll get to probably a couple of them very soon. But yeah, that's pretty much where we are. There's social networks, BTS Ohio on Twitter, Big Time Sports Ohio, Facebook and Instagram, at Mitch Spinell, at Mitchell Balla. Mitch, I want to go over some of the stuff we had last night because a lot of stuff is really going down, heating up in the basketball world, especially on the boys' side, to where you were at, I believe, last night's game between the Glen Oak Golden Eagles and the Jackson Polar Bears, a game in which, when I saw that game was going into overtime and the way it went into overtime, I thought there's no way Jackson's going to be losing this game. But give credit to the Eagles. They held on. They ended up winning 70-62. And now we have a three-way tie for first in the Federal League between Jackson, Glen Oak, and Green, who ended up winning on Tuesday night.
So, Mitch, I'll tell you about that game. I just want to make sure before we head after this segment, I want to make sure we talk about the upcoming schedule for these three teams that are tied atop the Federal League.
Oh,
to
yeah,
make
yeah.
sure we can get through all these scenarios. But I was at Jackson last night taking on Glen Oak. This is the same Jackson team that beat Glen Oak 74-55 4 weeks to the date last night. They handed Glen Oak their first loss of the season, also the first Federal League loss. And really, from that point on, it was Jackson's league to lose. They controlled their own destiny the rest of the way with some wiggle room. They tripped up at green. There was one thing, though, I knew, Mitch. As talented as Jackson is, and as much as I've had to talk about them this year, both biased and unbiased opinions, Glen Oak has a head coach named Rick Hairston. And Rick Hairston is a phenomenal basketball coach, a phenomenal teacher and leader of men. There's plenty of alumni he's had, whether that was at Timken or then Canton McKinley once the merger between Timken and McKinley happened. And now at Glen Oak, that would say how great of a person he is. And I've interviewed him a couple times. He's phenomenal. When Glen Oak lost to Jackson back on January 3rd, he said, I had a game plan tonight. It did not work. That's on me, and we got to fix it. Coach Hairston fixed that last night. And instead of Glen Oak really playing through their top player in Ja'Cory Lipkins, who still was their leading scorer, Mitch, Glen Oak got contributions from every single player that stepped on the floor last night. That was not the case in early January when Jackson went over there and really ran Glen Oak off their own home floor. And this is a Glen Oak team that, Mitch, they shot the ball well. Sophomore Bryce Broom was unbelievable. He had 17 points last night. And what he might have the quickest shot in the Federal League. It's almost unblockable in terms of a jump shot. Maybe Kassenheiser for Lake is a close second. I know you got to see him last night, I do believe. But you have to give credit to Glen Oak, Mitch. This is a team that went into the halftime locker room with a lead. They held Jackson to 6 points in the second quarter. And then once this game went into overtime, they held Jackson to 6 points in overtime. And really, they made Jackson work the entire game. Jackson had a huge run in the third. Owen Wolbert scoring 10 straight points for Jackson, scoring 14 of his 20 points in the second half alone. And really, Mitch, in that third quarter, Ja'Cory Lipkins did not have his first point, I believe, until there was 1 second left on the clock, which was a free throw attempt. So Jackson not only silenced Glen Oak offensively, they also were able to get things going offensively. Wolbert was phenomenal. He was the highest scorer in the entire game with 20 points and 10 rebounds, yet another double-double for the big man. But Lipkins, 19 points. And Mitch, here's where the game was won. Glen Oak, 17 of 22 from the free throw line. Jackson, 13 of 26. Not only that, but Jackson last night shot 41.5%. Mitch, to my knowledge, at least at all the home games I've covered this year, that is Jackson's worst performance shooting from the field. And then from three, Mitch, 19%, 5 of 26. They could not buy a shot from the outside. And this Jackson team does not necessarily rely on the outside shot to win, but Wolbert picked up 4 fouls in the third. A lot of players on both sides were in foul trouble, and only one player fouled out, and it was with just about 10 seconds to go. It was Kyle Monterrubio for Jackson. But really, you look at this box score that I have in front of me. I know I sent it to you, and I'm sure that's something that jumped out to you right away. Glen Oak missing 5 free throws and Jackson missing 13. And Jackson ends up losing 70-62. And now you mentioned Glen Oak, Jackson, and Green tied atop the Federal League standings, Mitch. And here's what gets interesting. All those teams just have 2 Federal League games remaining.
We'll be looking out for those in the near future, because last night you mentioned, I looked at that free throw line that you sent me at, and I couldn't believe it. That's the difference between a close overtime loss and a comfortable regulation victory. And give credit to Jackson. They held in there. It looked like Glen Oak might be able to close out the game in regulation when there was a video on Twitter of Jalen McElroy stealing the ball and getting a breakaway layup to take a 2-point lead with about 20 seconds or so. And then Jackson goes down the floor. Anthony Feline has a mid-ranger from the right side of within the 3-point line. Tough shot to make without the backboard, but he gets it. And then Lipkins attempted a long 3, didn't go in. You go to overtime. Yeah. And it was just Glen Oak from there.
Yeah. And you mentioned the turnover really was a Monterrubio pass near the Jackson bench. It was stolen by McElroy, Mitch. That's the other thing to look at. Jackson had 15 turnovers on their own home floor. When you go on the road, not that 15 turnovers is ever acceptable. I think if you ask any coach that coaches basketball at any level, how many turnovers do you want to limit yourself to? 15 is never acceptable. But if you go on a hostile road environment, I get it. But on your own home floor with the crowd behind you against a team you already played, it was just a bad night from the line and turnover-wise for Jackson. And literally, Mitch, you have to give all the credit to Glen Oak. This is a team that completely flipped what happened in the first game. Like I said, 74-55 54-55 was the final score 4 weeks ago. And this is a team that comes on the road with their season on the line, Mitch. Realistically, that was it. Jackson last night could have potentially clinched a share of the Federal League and then really wrapped it up Friday. And now here we go.
Yeah, and while you were over there at, I believe the game was in Massillon, I was over in Hartville for a rematch between the Hoover Vikings and the Lake Blue Streaks. And, Lake beat them pretty close at the beginning of the season, around 46-43. This one ended up 55-38 over Lake. And you wouldn't have thought that to be the case in the first half because the Vikings had much offensive control throughout the first half and were up, I believe, 25-19 at halftime. And then the Vikings had 4 turnovers in the first half for the game. They had 8 in the second half. They had 3 to start off the second half. And you mentioned Chance Kassenheiser. He got things going late in the game with 17 points. Landon Roth had 14 points in the second half to go with 21 points on the game. Dominated in shooting in that way. Also added 8 rebounds for the Blue Streaks. And it just got to a point where Lake just kept capitalizing off of every Hoover mistake, and the Vikings could not create shots the way they were able to in the first half. In the first half, they're able to, get a couple of threes going early on in the game. They have some very nice backdoor cuts near the end until near going into halftime that caught the Blue Streaks off guard, but they made 5 field goals in the second half and were like I said, outscored 36-13 over the final 2 periods. Lake posted a 19-4 scoring advantage in the final period. So now they get their record back to 500 and above 500 in conference play.
And Hoover this year, Mitch, it's obviously not went how they would like it to go. A down year for the Vikings, but this is a school that can reload fast. And so you already start to look towards next year now, knowing that they have no shot in the last week to win the Federal League title. You mentioned Roth for Lake, Mitch. I'm not sure where you were of the story. I'm sure you were pretty well informed since you were on the call last night on the Big Time Sports Game of the Week. Roth is a player that went down earlier this season at Canton McKinley. Right. And whatever happened injury wise, long story short, he injured both arms, whether it was his wrist, elbow. There was conflicting reports without me ever actually finding out from him. He returned last week against Jackson. Mitch, this is a player that a lot of Federal League teams and coaches thought was done for the season. The only reason I knew something was going on is because I'm up there calling the game and this loud ovation breaks out. And typically, especially when you saw the crowd size for Lake that had traveled to Jackson, you knew something was going on. And when he checked in, I was going down the line and looking at the sheet. And I thought, I wonder if this is the big kid that got hurt. Mitch, he adds a whole new element to Lake. Lake that is now out of the Fed title. I've mentioned McKinley all year. You don't want to see them in the tournament. You don't want to see Lake now in the tournament because now Kassenheiser has somebody to help him both offensively and defensively. And he adds a whole new element to Lake and almost allows other players that were starting in place of him to go back to the role they're most comfortable with and maybe now take on a little bit bigger of a role after having that familiarity with starting and having to accept new roles. So it's a huge win for Lake. And it's just something interesting to keep your eye on as the tournament nears because Lake, another team I don't want to see in the tournament.
No doubt. And it's funny that you mentioned a 3-way tie in the Federal League at the top right now, because in the IVC in my area, we have 3 teams tied atop the IVC South. Starting in the IVC North, that's been Malvern all season, and the Hornets clinched the outright title last night by beating East Canton pretty handily. Now, Malvern's up to 17-1 on the season. That's going to be a team that's going to be very fascinating to watch, as they have a good combination of inside scorers and outside scorers, and not from the ones you would expect. You have a guy like Mitch Miner in there who stands at around 6'6", and he's one of their top 3-point shooters a number of times. He's had multiple games this year where he's been able to break out. Now, this game the other night went more so towards the performance of Jalen Barino, who had 24 points on the game to lead the Hornets, who won 72-47. And they spread out the scoring later in the game. Barino only played into the end of the third quarter because the game was out of reach by then for the losing Hornets. But Rodney Smith added a couple of points. You had Jared Witherow in there, Drake Hutchinson. Witherow also led the team in rebounds with 7. So Malvern still unbeaten in the IVC North, are the last unbeaten in the IVC overall in conference play. 17-1 on the season. Their only loss this year to Maysville. Maysville kind of came in there and stunned the Hornets at home, but Malvern's going to be an interesting one to watch. But that 3-way tie I mentioned at top of the IVC South is between Indian Valley Garaway, and I just lost it here. Sandy Valley, yes, because the Cardinals in Magnolia last night beat Garaway 61-57 in overtime. So they're 8-3 on the season. The Pirates are 8-3, even though Garaway for much of this year was atop the standings. Their only losses late in this year to Sandy Valley and Claymont among the mix. And then Indian Valley beats Tusky Valley last night 63-43, led by a big time sports player of the week performance by Tyson Pryor. He had 25.6 boards, and all of a sudden, Indian Valley sneaking up there along with Sandy Valley to threaten the chances of Garaway winning the conference. And like your situation, Mitch, just a handful of games left in the season, I believe. There's only 2 conference games between the 3 squads. What do the situations look like in the Federal League first in terms of who these teams will be facing off with one another late in the season?
So, Mitch, it is a 3-way tie as we sit here today recording this episode. And by the time the listeners listen to it, it will still be a 3-way tie. It is Glen Oak, Green, and Jackson that all 3 have a 7-3 Federal League record. Let's start with Glen Oak, Mitch. There's going to be a 4th team that enters this because there is a realistic possibility it is a 4-way tie co-champion in the Federal League. But let's start out with the 3 teams tied first. Glen Oak, they travel to Lake and then they host the Green Bulldogs on senior night. Glen Oak has already beaten Green at Green this year, so that is a game Green will be looking to get revenge. Speaking of Green this Friday night hosts the Canton McKinley Bulldogs, a team they've already beat this year at the Fieldhouse. That was a game, I believe, that was on Big Time Sports, and we saw Brady Rollison drop 30 points.
Yep.
And then Green goes to Glen Oak. Jackson plays at Perry Friday night, and then at McKinley the next Friday night. Now, Mitch, if you're following along here, 2 of the 3 teams mentioned each play the same opponent. Green plays McKinley and Jackson plays McKinley. McKinley is 6-4 in the Federal League, Mitch. And McKinley plays at Green and then home against Jackson. There is a world in which if McKinley wins their final 2 games, we have a 4-way tie atop the Federal League. This is a team, Mitch, that started off 3-0 and then had won or lost 6 in a row. And this is a McKinley team that we thought at the beginning of the season was the favorite to win the Federal League. A lot of talent, returned practically everybody from last year. Jackson finally beat McKinley for the first time since the 2019 season this year. It was a huge win. You thought, okay, maybe McKinley isn't what we thought they were. And now here they are, Mitch. McKinley is literally control their own destiny and they could be a Federal League champion when we kind of wrote them off. I just think it's interesting because these 4 teams are going to be playing high-level basketball, Mitch, before the tournament. Win or lose, yes, somebody's going to be upset that they either A, did not win the Federal League outright, or they just don't get a share of the Federal League. But the 4 teams that are playing the next 2 Federal League games are going so battle tested. This tournament comes here in just a couple of weeks. So if you are out there and looking for something to do, I highly recommend going to watch one of those 4 teams mentioned play in one of the next 2 games because it is going to be great high school basketball. And I cannot wait, Mitch, to sit here in just a week and a half and figure out who won the Federal League and how.
No doubt. No doubt. I wish I could say that we have a number of head-to-head matchups like you guys do in the Federal League, but for the IVC, not a ton of them, if anything, going into this last week. You have Garaway on this coming Friday, playing against the Claymont Mustangs, who aren't really in the mix. You'll have Sandy Valley on Saturday end up playing against Carrollton. You also have on next Tuesday, which is less than a week from today's recording, the Cardinals will play against Tusky Valley. Garaway will play against Malvern, and Ridgewood will play Indian Valley. And then you have a couple of non-conference games after February 10th, but Saturday, February 11th is one to watch. That's the IVC Showcase at Claymont High School, where you match up the teams by records, and then the final 2 top teams play the final contest to showcase who was the best in the IVC this year. And I'm sure there's going to be many people who are going to be attending over in Uricksville, one of the largest arenas we have here in Tuscarawas County. So yeah, that is what's going on in high school action. When we come back from this break, we'll go more into some breaking news from this morning and some other stories here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding
988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week. Visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Vibe Auto Sales, located on West High Avenue in New Philadelphia and Cleveland Avenue in Canton, is a used car dealership committed to getting financing for everyone. We give every customer that walks in our showrooms a prime buying experience, no matter their credit score or financial situation. Current inventory can be viewed at www.wefinancenow.com. Check out our Facebook pages for the most up-to-date information about upcoming events and promotions happening at Vibe Auto Sales.
And welcome you back here to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla. So, Mitch, we got some breaking news that broke this morning, actually, as I was working on a couple other articles today. That one came across Twitter, a video by one Tom Brady, who has announced that he is retiring for good this time. It's 1 year to the date, mind you, of his first retirement announcement that ended up being reversed course 40 days after, back in 2022. Now it's 2023, and Brady has announced that it looks like he's going to be officially retiring after 23 seasons between the Patriots and the Buccaneers. Mitch, I think it's good timing. The free agent, he's going to be a free agent this offseason. We knew he probably was going to come, not going to come back to Tampa Bay. Had a tough year by Brady standards. He was still, I believe, like third in the league among passing yards, but it just wasn't the same standard as you were. And plus, it was his first losing season with the Buccaneers. You easily get bounced by the Cowboys of all teams in the playoffs. It looked like it was just time.
And it was the last team that he had not lost to. The Cowboys, may we keep that in mind. It was the team he had never lost to in his career, Mitch. I think that there's obviously speculation out there. Obviously, is he actually retired? Did this last year? I do think he's done, Mitch. I really do, because you mentioned he did not play. He didn't suck, right? He just didn't play up to Tom Brady's standards that we're accustomed to seeing from Tom Brady. And that's fine. I think he is done for good because he put this video out. He said it himself. And to me, Mitch, you heard last year when the report came out that he was retiring, that was not from Tom Brady. It upset him.
Yeah, it was from Adam Schefter.
And I think Tom wanted to get out ahead of everything and make sure he put it out there this year. Now, whether he came back for a whole bunch of different reasons, I'm not getting into that, because we're talking about one of the greatest players and athletes ever, one of the most accomplished players ever. Mitch, I have everything pulled up here. 15-time Pro Bowler, which earlier in his career, that actually meant something. Now, as things have changed a lot in the Pro Bowl, 3-time All-Pro, 3-time AP MVP. He is a 7-time Super Bowl champ, which is the most all time, 5-time Super Bowl MVP. He is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer in Canton, Ohio here in 5 years, and he will likely be joined by J.J. Watt. So what a class that is going to be. And he holds a lot of records passing. And this is a league, Mitch, that the average career of any NFL player, I believe, is between 3 and 4 seasons. And this man played over 20. And I just think what kind of sucks in this, and I'll say this, and I don't want to get into an argument. I have never been the full guy up front that Brady is the undeniable GOAT. Does he have the most Super Bowls? Yes, I get it. I think there's a lot of things that go into why he has that many Super Bowls. That's a discussion and debate for a different day. But there's been 2 athletes in our entire life, and from majority of the listeners, Mitch, that we have been accustomed to seeing every season performing at a high level. And one of them is gone, and the other one we're going to talk about here later in the show, in LeBron James. And so it's just kind of crazy to see 2 guys that have defied the odds, that have defied really Father Time in a certain extent. And it's just going to be weird without him. It really is. It's going to be bizarre without Tom Brady playing in the NFL. But he is by far one of the greatest of all time. I mean, I didn't even get to half of the awards he has here. But I mean, you're talking about a guy that passed for 89,214 yards in his career, 649 touchdowns, 212 interceptions. He had a record of 251-82-0, which is actually shocking because you can tie in the NFL. Did you know that? And he never had a tie in 20 plus years.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Well, ties became more of a regular thing in the last decade, I think, than they did in the thousands.
But this man was also here for the last decade. I just figured you see some of these teams that tie bad teams. Crazy.
He's the only quarterback. He's the only quarterback, by the way, to make the all-decade teams in the 2000s and the 2010s. So that shows you longevity.
Yeah. And he's 2-time Offensive Player of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year after he tore his ACL, I believe, in 2008 season, because he was 2009 AP Comeback Player of the Year. And Mitch, you're never going to see something like this again. There's people already that want to talk, Mahomes could catch him for 7 Super Bowls. Well, Mahomes has 1. He has to get 2. We'll see what happens, in a week and a half. But it won't be the same, Mitch, because Mahomes was the 12th pick overall in the draft?
Yes.
Tom Brady was a 6th round pick.
Yeah.
And so for everybody that says, the Browns passed on Mahomes and the Bears passed on Mahomes. It doesn't matter. Tom Brady went 5.5 total rounds of teams saying this guy will never be good enough to be an NFL quarterback. And he got his one chance when the quarterback went ahead of him, went down. Tom Brady took it and ran with it. And we have now seen perhaps the most impressive football career you're ever going to see.
No doubt. No doubt. I had a meme here that I wanted to share with you before I get to the next topic regarding this. And I've officially lost it. And now I found it. So this was posted by Sunday Night Football's Twitter account. If I can get it up here, it's the end of an era meme. And I'm looking at these guys and I'm like, I feel like I'm 1,000 looking at all this. You got Manning, Brady, Breeze, Rivers, Roethlisberger, Eli. Those were the QBs that, like our fathers with John Elway and Dan Marino and Dan Fouts and all those guys before us, Montana. This is a perspective that is it's humbling to an extent, I feel like.
And what's crazy is, Mitch, that graphic he just put up, one of those 6 players did not win a Super Bowl, because usually the other 5 were always on a better team winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Phillip Rivers never won a Super Bowl. Ben has 2 or 3.
2.
We know Peyton has 2. He became the first quarterback in NFL history to win one with a different franchise. Now Brady became the second, obviously, with New England, Tampa. Breeze has 1. Manning has 2. He beat Tom Brady, gave Brady 2 of his 3 Super Bowl losses. Just, it's incredible. And you sent it to me and said, wow, we're getting old. And it's true. I realized a couple of years ago we were getting old, Mitch, when I was looking at the enshrinement classes for the Pro Football Hall of Fame and said, hey, I had that guy in fantasy football in 6th or 7th grade. And I thought, oh my gosh, wait a second. Randy Moss is going to the Hall of Fame. Ray Lewis is going to the Hall of Fame. I know all these guys going in now. When you're younger, you don't know half the guys going in. And it's bittersweet because I think we really did get to see a decade, 2 decades long of just amazing performances at quarterback. So good that a quarterback like Phillip Rivers, who has some records, never was able to get to a Super Bowl. Now, whether you want to say it's because the Chargers are cursed, whatever.
Well, he's the Dan Fouts of his era.
Yeah. I mean, the quarterback play we had there, I never thought we'd see it again. But Mitch, with how the AFC is shaping up alone right now, we might be entering another era where we're going to see that same graphic with 6 different quarterbacks on it from now the 2020s to the 2030s, 2040s.
Yeah, in 2041, we're going to see the end of an era with like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. You could even throw in there a couple other guys. I mean, I know Dak's got some stock down right now, but he might be up there. I mean, Rodgers is the last of the kind. Rodgers is the last of the kind, and he was later than a number of these guys. So it's just interesting to see that.
Rodgers and one other quarterback that I think still gets a little disrespect, Matt Stafford. And I know he was hurt.
Yeah. I'll give you that.
Those are the 2 guys, I think, to your point, are kind of just caught in the middle of that of they were a little late into this generation of quarterbacks that we just showed on the screen, but too early to kind of group them in with Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and, maybe now Jalen Hurts and these other quarterbacks that they're kind of just standalone guys in their own right. And that's fine because those are also 2 of the top quarterbacks of our generation.
Very true. So now we go over to what I wanted to address regarding this retirement announcement. Even when it looked like Tampa Bay was going to be moving on from him, you are officially not going to have Tom Brady on your roster for the 2023-24 campaign. You have some options now because you can you don't have the greatest draft position to where you're not going to be able to get a guy like CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. Is this a situation where you try to work it so that you can get a higher pick next year? Do you work this offseason to try and make a move? Do you sign somebody? Do you trade for somebody? What do you do today, Mitch, if you are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers general manager to try and work your way into a good quarterback for the future?
I think it's tough because I think you always see teams, Mitch, kind of wait to see what the first domino is. And I think that's kind of where you want to be because I think the top domino that has to fall first is where is Aaron Rodgers going, right? Just the other day, somebody asked Rodgers, who I believe he is at a golf thing right now. I don't know. He's obviously not in Green Bay. There are rumblings now that both sides want to move on. Rodgers, we know, has been upset that he's never been consulted on every move the Packers have made, yada, yada, yada. Long story short, he said it's news to him. But Mitch, it seems like that is almost inevitable for a divorce. Now, the Buccaneers, from what I've gathered from somebody I trust, that is a fan, but also just a wizard when it comes to like cap and stuff like that. His name's also Mitch. Just three guys named Mitch that are just studs. He said that the Buccaneers do not have the money to afford somebody like Rodgers, let alone maybe someone like Derek Carr, and that they don't have the draft capital. To your point, when you posed to me earlier of trading up to get the number 1 pick from the Bears or from a team top 5.
Let me be clear, because I was from a report that the Bears were set on having Justin Fields as a quarterback and were likely going to trade that pick, which we expected because Fields, I think, proved enough this year that they're going to try and invest in the future. But yeah, it's likely that it's going to happen now.
And so now when I click this on Spotrac of upcoming quarterbacks that are free agents, unrestricted free agents, Tom Brady's off the board.
Right.
You have the names of Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Jimmy Garoppolo, Teddy Bridgewater, Daniel Jones, who it's expected he's going to re-sign with the Giants.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see. Case Keenum, Mason Rudolph, Jacoby Brissett, Geno Smith, Joe Flacco. I mean, Mitch, you really start to dip into these. I'm not counting Lamar Jackson. I think the Ravens are going to.
No, but you're missing a guy. You're missing a guy that's not officially a free agent yet. Plays out in Vegas, not for long though. Yeah.
I think it depends what happens there though, because you look at somebody.
Well, they're getting rid of him.
They are getting rid of him. We know that for a fact, which is kind of ironic because he's now a Pro Bowl alternate.
Yeah,
which
we'll get into that in a little bit. Yeah.
But do the Colts take a quarterback, but do they want somebody to mentor him? Do they trade for Carr? Are the Titans done with Tannehill? And we know that it's apparent they really don't trust Malik Willis. So do they trade for Carr? I mean, that's where I think the Buccaneers are stuck right now, because you don't want to mortgage everything else you have left on Carr if the pieces that you have there aren't going to be there long enough to be there with Carr to a point where you just have a good quarterback and a bad team. But you don't want to get stuck out there to a point where your only option is getting a veteran quarterback unless you're okay with being down for a couple of years to try to build your team back through the draft. The Buccaneers are just in a very awkward position.
Yeah, it is a tough spot. And again, I think they're going to wait to see where some of these quarterbacks go this offseason. I would just hope for their sake they don't wait too long so that you're going to be peddling out some third-rate guy potentially that might cause you to dip in a couple of wins this upcoming season. But we'll see where it goes, and we'll see where the next segment goes, because I want to talk about some names that we mentioned during that previous segment. I also want to touch on some hirings or near hirings that we'll be expecting this offseason pre-Super Bowl. So stay with us.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
You asked for it and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Ballard here to give you the latest in the sporting world. Mitch, the latest that we have here broke a couple of minutes ago, came across our desk. It has been officially announced that the return of the Arena Football League is imminent. So we have seen, Mitch, in the last 3 or 4 years, the return of the United States Football League, the Extreme Football League, and now we're getting the Arena League back. We need to get the Gladiators or the Destroyers, more preferably the Gladiators, back in this mix because, Mitch, the Gladiators games were like this unique brand of football that was always fun to go up to the city and watch.
Mitch, I don't know. Do you remember the Canton Legends?
I
Arena
do remember
football
the
team-
Canton Legends. I never went to a Canton game, but I remember them.
I went to a couple at the Civic Center, and it was so cool. It was so different. And so I agree. This is actually very exciting. I'm more excited for this than I was the XFL or USFL, which other news is the USFL will now be playing some regular season games in Canton at the Pro
Yes.
Football Hall of Fame Benson Stadium, where they play their Super Bowl. I believe, I don't know what the championship game is called, but that's where they played last year. And now it was, broken last week that they will be playing regular season games here. So you wonder, is it possible that an Arena Football League comes back to Ohio and A, goes to Cleveland, or B, Mitch, do they end up playing here in Canton where the Hall of Fame has just built that brand new dome? Is that something the Hall of Fame thought about ahead of time?
I would hope so for our sake. But I think, you definitely want to go for the major hubs first,
right?
Which are Cleveland or Columbus. And if you can't do that, put a team in Canton. I mean, that's what the G League did. That's what the old arena teams kind of did with the Legends, as you mentioned. So yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, I was about to say the Civic Center, as much as I've had good memories there, you probably want to put it in that big new bubble that that's in the Hall of Fame right now. So we'll be looking out for more news in regards to the Arena League coming back. I always remember as a kid discovering the Arena League. I'm like, wait, what? These guys are playing in a boxed field, and you can get tackled over a wall. Wait, what? Games are like 89 to 87.
Yeah.
Guys hit the net with kickoffs. What? I can't believe this, and I have to watch every single game. And then the first iteration was, I remember when it folded, I was like, damn it. And then the second one came back, less teams, wasn't as fruitful as the second time, even though the Gladiators were good at that point. And then when I remember I think I told the story before, my boss, I remember when we had the coverage of the Gladiators before the league folded again. And I remember, because nobody was covering it at the time near its end, I was like, hey, listen, boss, if you need anybody to go cover these games for you, when I wasn't covering games at the time, I'm like, give me a call, because I'm right there. I will go to these games. I will get you what you need. I will talk to these guys who are still trying to work their way into the NFL. And of course, nothing came of it. Maybe something will come of it. I don't know. But going back to the actual National Football League, the stories that we were talking about before we started our show today, some coaching hirings here, one official, one not official yet, but it seems imminent. The one obviously is the Houston Texans finding a former player as their new head coach in D'Amico Ryans, who comes over as the 49ers defensive coordinator to a 6-year deal in Houston. So, Ryan had his first interview with the Texans back on January 20th, met with other teams, but it looks like, Houston was always a top spot for him. And this is an interesting one, Mitch, because you're bringing in a defensive-minded coach, and not to say that Houston's defense doesn't need improvement, but the offense is what's really been killing the Texans for the last couple of years. And you have this pick coming up where it looks like you might have to restructure your offense. So I wonder what kind of help he'll be able to bring over.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, is what type of coordinators does he bring with him, and who is going to be the play caller and really the coaching staff that grooms what we expect to be the new franchise quarterback. It seems like the Texans are going to take a quarterback with the second pick overall in the NFL draft here coming up in just a few months. So I think that's the big question mark. But this is a team, Mitch, that has fired 2 coaches in 2 seasons after 1 year. I think it's big that the Texans have already came out and said Ryans is getting a 6-year deal. I think that's big, both for the fan base, for the media, and then also D'Amico as well, because I think it gives him a little bit of comfortability and knowing that, hey, this is a team that has not been good. They've been one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the NFL for 2-3 years now. So if I do struggle, I'm going to be coming back. Now, it doesn't mean you can struggle for 3-4 years, but I always wonder what to expect from coordinators, Mitch, because I do think as a coordinator that first year, and we saw it firsthand with Kevin Stefanski, that first year teams are not typically ready to see what you're going to do. He has been probably the hottest name out of candidates on the market that were coaching this season. And you just wonder, is he a great developer in terms of talent with his players and putting a system in that best suits his players' abilities? Or was he a guy that just kind of had a very vanilla system and he let all these studs that the Niners have on defense go to work? And I think you'll see that eventually. I think it's way too early and it's unfair to try to judge him off 1 or 2 years. I think it's just something you have to keep in mind, but I like this hire for them because this is a younger coach. This is somebody that has familiarity with the Houston area. He played there and he was one of the hottest names. So for Houston to be able to go out and get him after he had interviewed for or had been requested by the Broncos, Panthers, and Colts, I think this is a big get for the Texans. And hopefully, Mitch, it's the right guy because they've just been turning over and over and over ever since Deshaun Watson said, I don't want to be here anymore once they traded DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, and as far as that defense goes, their rushing defense is ranked 27th in the last 3 seasons in a row. Passing defense hasn't been bad. They were 10th in league in passing yards allowed per game, around 209, and had more interceptions than touchdowns last season. So that there's a bright spot in there, but the offense really needs to have a complete turnaround. And you have 2 draft picks in the top 12, so that helps. One will be likely used on either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud if the number 1 pick is not used for one of them. And then, number 12, you could probably find a defensive guy in there to kind of bolster the rush game, but we'll see what happens. Now, as far as the other story, there's been a lot of reported developments between these two sides. It looks like the Denver Broncos are going to broker a deal to get Sean Payton over from the New Orleans Saints. Payton taking the year off, working in broadcasting. Now, this one had a whole thing where reportedly the Broncos might have been trying to steal D'Amico Ryans at the last minute, and then they didn't. So now they're going to go with Sean Payton. I would think if you were going to take any person over D'Amico Ryans, no disrespect to a former Pro Bowl player, it's the guy who won the Super Bowl with the Saints.
Yeah.
But, Sean Payton's an interesting choice in the sense of him having to completely restructure an offense that was one of the worst in the NFL last season, try to revamp Russell Wilson as a QB to get him some respect again and to get this team back to a respectful level, because this team with its defense can be competitive even with those Chiefs and those Chargers in the AFC West. So they'd be like a defensive counterpart to the offensive-minded Kansas City and LA squads.
You're absolutely right. And I think that obviously we saw the Broncos struggle this year. Obviously, Nathaniel Hackett may have been a little bit in over his head as a first-year head coach, may have had too much on his plate. It left the question, though, Mitch, does Russell Wilson stink? Is he not good? I think if there's one coach that's going to be able to try to figure that out faster than anybody, it is Sean Payton. It is Sean Payton who had a shorter quarterback that holds multiple records in the NFL, that is a future Pro Football Hall of Famer, Drew Brees. Now, I'm not saying Russell Wilson is the same exact player, but they're very similar in their play styles in terms of throwing the football, Mitch. And let's not act like the Broncos don't have weapons either. The Broncos have weapons. This is a good team that just something fell apart, whether it was Russell Wilson or whether it was Nathaniel Hackett, whatever it may be. This is a team that on paper is very talented, has weapons. You mentioned their defense, one of the top defenses in the NFL this year, despite their record. This is a great hire. Now it says here that the Saints will receive the Broncos 2023 first round pick, which is number 29 overall, and 2024 second round pick. And the Saints 2024 third round pick goes with Sean Payton then to Denver. I like the hire. I was starting to wonder if Sean Payton really wanted to coach again, because you heard how these teams that were going after him, and then you kind of heard it just die down a little bit. But here we are. You have an offensive-minded coach going to Denver, and now we're going to find this is a coach, Mitch. Now, I think within a year, you're going to be able to tell what type of team Denver is just because of the players they have and the fact that Payton is a proven head coach. And we'll see, but it is rumored that he will be looking to bring Vic Fangio on his staff as his defensive coordinator, who also was the head coach of the Broncos at one point.
Yeah, and it's not even just going to be like making sure you can get production on the field. This is going to be a necessary cultural change for Denver, who since Peyton Manning has just not had structure, whether it be under center, whether it be on their sideline. This is something where Peyton's going to really have to start from scratch and try to bring Russell Wilson back down to earth. I think last year pretty much did the bulk of that work already, but there's going to be some changes that need to be made with this offense. There's going to be some new ways in which this offense operates. Now the defense, just keep it under control. I wouldn't change much. And who knows if Denver can maybe be a team that can compete for a wild card spot next season, because you still got Kansas City in there. Who knows what LA is going to do with Staley still, even though you got a new system in there. But I don't know. I can maybe see this being a year where if all things go well, Denver could usurp LA, and then maybe, and I'm talking maybe, challenge the Chiefs for the AFC West. Maybe.
Probably not.
I said it,
but
I said
probably not. But maybe.
If all things go well, if Sean Payton has an offense that's just clicking, if Russell Wilson looks like it's 2013 again, if he can do these things, and that's if they work, because if you have one little hiccup, then the entire house of cards comes down.
I agree. I completely agree. And there's a lot of people out there, Mitch, that ask, is Sean Payton really that good of a head coach? And I think it's fair. It's fair.
Yeah.
Because when you have a generational quarterback like Drew Brees, and you only won one Super Bowl, you also were suspended for a year because of a bounty scandal that happened underneath you. And you have some performances in the playoffs where your team just doesn't show up. It's fair to question that, but this is a coach that was 152 and 89 in his 15 seasons as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. He took a team that, Mitch, was never any good, and he put them in a Super Bowl to beat Peyton Manning and the Colts, and also in an NFC Championship game, I do believe, and then also has a couple notable playoff losses. But I think that you leave that in New Orleans, right? Now you're in a new spot. He's going to have a completely new staff because his staff is still in New Orleans, in Dennis Allen, somebody that was under him for a couple of years. So
yeah,
I think this is a good hire. I think for both sides, I know it was rumored Peyton only wanted to go to LA or Dallas. Obviously, Mike McCarthy staying in Dallas, Sean McVay staying in LA along with Brandon Staley. This is probably the next best stop for him. We'll have to wait and see. This is very intriguing because, Mitch, generally it's between 4 and 6 teams every single season that did not make the playoffs the next season. This is a team that has enough talent to make the playoffs. And now it seems they have the right head coach in place. Will it work out, though? We're going to have to wait a while to see, but I am excited. And maybe the AFC West becomes that gauntlet of a division that we thought it was going to be this year before the Broncos and the Raiders just sucked.
Yeah, typically. And I could see the Broncos making it a 3-team race. The Raiders, I'm still not totally sure, depending on who you get. Now, speaking of quarterbacks, this Pro Bowl story, and I get that the Pro Bowl thing is not even a Pro Bowl anymore. It's just a bunch of mini games that these guys are playing nowadays. Like, this Pro Bowl this year now, with all the developments that happened in the last week, looks like that Major League Baseball All-Star game from 2011 in Arizona, when you had guys like David Robertson somehow slide into the mix because so many players are getting injured. This one is the story that developed this week, obviously, with a number of guys either injured or playing in the Super Bowl. We got a few new representatives in the AFC for QBs. We have new Pro Bowlers. Trevor Lawrence, fair. He had a bounce back season, led Jacksonville to an AFC South divisional title. Derek Carr, which is going to be funny because he's been wearing Raiders stuff for the last time. And Tyler Huntley, who threw all of 2 touchdowns this past season, filling in for Lamar Jackson. There is something very, very off about saying those words. Tyler Huntley made the 2023 Pro Bowl. And look, Tyler Huntley for the last 2 seasons has had to come in and fill some big shoes. I'll give him credit for that. Does making a Pro Bowl now? I mean, I know it's not even the big thing anymore. It's all pro more than Pro Bowl. How much luster does the Pro Bowl nod lose by somebody like this making it?
I mentioned it when we were talking about Tom Brady last segment, that 15-time Pro Bowler, and it carried more weight earlier on in his career, Mitch, because of what we've seen happening now. This is no personal shot at Tyler Huntley, but Mitch, he's not a Pro Bowler.
No,
he's not. 2-2 this year in games he started. You mentioned he threw 2 touchdowns. Mitch, there was a guy who went 4-7 this year who I was never high on, that threw 12 touchdowns and had an 88.9 passer rating. And that was Jacoby Brissett. I will admit, I was never high on him. You know that. Anybody that listens to this podcast during the season knows that. But how on earth does Jacoby Brissett not get an opportunity? This man played more games. He threw 10 more touchdowns. He only threw 3 more interceptions. He appeared in 16 games, but he started 11. So in 7 more games, he only threw 3 more picks than Tyler Huntley. It's actually crazy. because he also, according to Pro Football Reference here, had 243 yards rushing compared to Tyler Huntley's 137.
Ready for this? Ready for this? Tyler Huntley threw 3 interceptions as well. So he's the first quarterback since Vince Young to make a Pro Bowl after throwing more interceptions and touchdowns. I could see if it was like 29 touchdowns and 29 interceptions, you're going Jameis Winston here. This is 2 and 3.
It's
this
a
is
joke.
2 and 3.
This is
not,
a joke.
2 and 3 guys should not be like, I don't get it. And look, you know, give him this. Many quarterbacks were not able to play because of injury. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is playing the Super Bowl this week or next week, 2 weeks from now. Josh Allen is hurt with the elbow. Also, he's going to be playing in a golf tournament. So I think he'd rather play golf than go on a football field and throw through a hoop. Tua Tagovailoa concussion. By the way, he just came off the concussion protocol today. So there's at least that. Give him the offseason to the rest and do what you got to do. Justin Herbert has a hurt shoulder. And then Lamar Jackson has the hurt knee. And then Joe Burrow is also he's just not going to play. He's just not going to go for it. He's going to go into a dark pit and just throw footballs the entire offseason because he's not going to let that happen again. Look, this is where it falls to. At least guys like Carr and Lawrence making it. It's like, yeah, I get it. Because, you know, they weren't the greatest this season, but they at least had steady, competent enough seasons to where, yeah, if you had some fill-ins, some replacements, I'd be like, I get these guys. But no, you kind of blew my mind with that Jacoby Brissett thing because it's like, yeah, I know he wasn't your main starter, but neither was Tyler Huntley. Like, I don't get it.
No,
maybe Jacoby. They went to him and asked him. He said no.
I don't know. And my only other thought is it because the Ravens made the playoffs? But like,
that might be it.
That might be it. I mean, I just put in another person here to compare. Now, obviously, he was not eligible to be in the AFC, but Mitch, Baker Mayfield put up far better numbers than Tyler Huntley this year.
Yeah, and the NFC is a little bit different too. Because
I get that, but it's just like,
God,
what are we doing here? Why? I mean, listen, this is not a shot at Tyler Huntley. Not if he stumbles upon this, I'm very happy for you because you get to say you were a Pro Bowler. Maybe you have more down the line. Maybe a team takes a flyer on you. Who knows?
Yeah.
But there was definitely a couple other quarterbacks, I think, Mitch, just starting with Jacoby Brissett.
I don't know if
you're more deserving to get an opportunity in this game.
I don't know if you have the ESPN article up here. Huntley sets the record now for least touchdowns by a Pro Bowl season. The previous one was 6. Can you name me the quarterback who made that Pro Bowl in 75?
Oh, so no shot. 75? No, I have no idea.
Mike, I can't even pronounce his name. Mike Barilla. Probably have. I have some Eagles fans that might be able to fill me in. Granted, they're all under 20 years old, so I don't know if they know who Mike Barilla is. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in this Pro Bowl. I don't even know if I'm going to watch it. I might just watch parts of it, but it's just at this point, man, it's like we said, it's not a game anymore. It's not in Hawaii. It's just a bunch of mini games. They're playing Madden. Who knows? So yeah, that's our third segment. We'll come back here. We'll go over some more miscellaneous topics at the end here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Hartzler's Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show, final segment here between Mitch Pinnell and Mitchell Balla. You know, I've been talking a lot today about the NFL. So going back over to the NBA, we start with the NBA discussion here because last night, performance for the season, man, so far for still one of the top players in LeBron James, who had a triple-double last night in the Lakers' victory over the New York Knicks. There was the big joke last night I saw on Twitter where someone was like, LeBron is 117 points short of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time record. Will he break it tonight? And I really wanted to post a Photoshop picture of the Wilt Chamberlain 100-point game photo with LeBron and just put like 118 on there, but I didn't have the time or the effort to do so. But LeBron, as I mentioned, 38 points, 11 assists, and I believe 10 boards. Yeah. For his first triple-double of the season, first player to log a triple-double in his 20th season or beyond. I mean, this is one of the words in this article is otherworldly to see what the guy that we all grew up loving and then hated for a while, then loved again, and then now we're just kind of like on moderate terms with him, to see him keep going and to see him still guiding a franchise in whatever season this is for him now is incredible.
It's like I'm running out of words to describe. And I got home last night able to flip on TNT to watch the tail end of that Lakers Knicks game and saw it go to overtime. It's actually shocking that he had not had a triple-double to this point. That was news to me. But Mitch, I just don't know when it's going to stop. I don't want it to stop.
No.
Okay. I don't want him to ever stop playing basketball because it's a joy to watch him now. And we were in that relationship where we loved each other and then we hated each other. And then we got back together and everything was good. And it's still good. And now it's just more of a fact that even if you don't like LeBron James, you have to watch this because it's history. It's history that if I ask my dad when I did the other day, he never thought he would ever see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record be broken in his lifetime, the all-time scoring record. And above that, Mitch, he passed, I believe, Mark Jackson last night and is almost, if not already, fifth all-time in assist in NBA history. You're going to see a player who is now 89 points away from the scoring title, finish inside the top 5 for assist, and have the most points scored in NBA history. And I truthfully don't think we'll ever see that be broken again, because not only does it take a phenomenal basketball player who can score the ball at will, it takes longevity. And Mitch, this is year 20. You don't see it often, and it's crazy. And it does not look like he has any signs of slowing down anytime soon, but it's awesome to see. And it just sucks that the Lakers are as bad as they are. But at the same time, I'm not counting out the Lakers to at least make the play-in tournament and get a run going, because if Anthony Davis stays healthy, Russell Westbrook, I think, is starting to figure out where he fits in when everybody is healthy. This is a team that, based off the names and that what every player can do on the floor, that could make a run, not saying for the finals, but make a run in the playoffs. And it's sad to see the Lakers as bad as they are, but anytime I can watch LeBron right now play basketball, Mitch, it's at the top of my list because I think we have another at least 2-3 years of him. I do think LeBron's smart enough to a point where he's not going to play to where his last year he would average 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists, something like that. LeBron's going to want to average a typical career LeBron James stat line for an entire season, if that makes sense. It's awesome to see, and that was a great game last night by the Lakers. They were able to come on the road, beat the Knicks, and now 89 points away, Mitch. When's he break it? When's he going to break the record?
I mean, it's probably going to be in that Bucks game where, at the rate we're going, unless LeBron just has a couple of off nights, then it's probably going to be there. Or if he has an amazing night, let's say he breaks out for 55 one game, then that completely throws off the pace that we're going at. Time will tell, then we'll tell, and it'll be a huge celebration when the time comes. Now, there was a topic you threw out here at the beginning before we started that was most overrated Major League Baseball players going into 2023. And the only thing I could really find for reference was a fan-sided piece that was written about 4 months ago that kind of listed a whole bunch of names that are in the league, overrated and underrated players, I should mention as well. I mean, I'll start with you, Mitch, because I do struggle with this sometimes where I don't really look at guys as overrated, but there might be some instance where it becomes, there might be a player one of these days where it becomes so obvious that they're being overhyped that I'm like, am I seeing the same thing as you guys are? But what kind of player would fit that mold for you heading into this season?
I have been on board with a player that I think is good. I think he is a very good player, everyday player for sure, but I just have never really understood the love and fascination with him. And maybe it is because I hate cheaters. Mitch, it's Alex Bregman, the third baseman for the Houston Astros. He was a talented player at LSU. He is a talented player now. But for the people out there that say he is an MVP candidate, which he has only ever received votes once, he finished 19th last year. I just don't see it. And not to mention, if you pull up his stats, he is a career 277 hitter, which is awesome. But if you go through the cheating years, his highest averages were through the years when the Astros were cheating. Like we know they cheated. He also had his career high in doubles when they were cheating, career high in walks when they were cheating. And since then, he has fallen off in certain aspects. I just tend to think Alex Bregman is one of the most overrated players in baseball. And I've said that now for about 3-4 years, and I just do not like him. I think he's a good baseball player, but I just think the way he carries himself, acting like he is a top third baseman in baseball, he's not. There's at least 5 other guys I would take before even blinking an eye to take Alex Bregman. Jose Ramirez, obviously, just so much better than Alex Bregman. But yeah, that was one of them. There was a couple I was thinking of, Mitch, and obviously one is out of spite. And obviously I had to eat my words last year. Francisco Lindor did have a very good year last year.
Right.
Okay? But yeah, for me, it's Alex Bregman. I think in terms of position players, I think he is one of the most overrated players in baseball.
I don't hate that that pick with Bregman. And it's not really because of a dislike of the Astros. I think that was fascinating that you pointed out to me that his best seasons did come pre-discovery of the cheating scandal. 2019 was his tops year with 41 homers, 112 RBIs, 119 walks. 296 average. It's funny. I didn't realize he never broke 300 for a season, but last few years, 242, 270, 259. He has had some injuries. 2021, he missed a significant amount of time with injuries. 2022 is back to near full health and didn't post quite as good numbers, but I'm willing to give him this season to see if he can return to that form. But that is an interesting thing to think about because I think he might be considered top 3 among name recognition. I don't necessarily think in terms of talent because I was looking over here. There's a number of names that I would take over him. You mentioned Jose, maybe Nolan Arenado. Yes. I would take Manny Machado over Bregman at this rate. Maybe Rafi Devers. Yeah, that's one where I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see it. As far as I can see, it's funny. The only 2 people I can really think that are being overhyped right now are rookies, and that's not necessarily fair to them because they're rookies. They still have ways to go, and that's both Julio Rodriguez for the Mariners. I almost said Seahawks, and Bobby Witt for the Royals. Like when I saw that Julio Rodriguez, and give all credit to him, he did enough to warrant a 15-year contract worth that much money at 22 years old that I'm like, hey, man, you did what you had to do. Good for you. But I saw that contract and I was like, he's played in less than one season. Am I missing something here? Because usually I've seen guys maybe in their second year or after their second year get a deal like this if they want to sign long term. And I'm like, this kid could completely fall off next season. What am I seeing here? It is a Seattle team that I think we might have mentioned this on the podcast back during baseball season. It is a Seattle team that's looking for a franchise guy. Haven't had one in a long time. Hadn't made the postseason in a long time before they got to it this year and ended up losing to Houston. And he could easily prove me wrong next year to where I'm like, okay, this guy is, not only physically capable for the long term, he's mentally capable. And apparently that's what Seattle saw in him. That's like, okay, we can give him this money and we won't have to completely regret it 5 years from now. But I'm just sort of sitting there like, and I'm looking at some of his numbers from last season. At the time this was written, it was 270, 67 RBIs with 23 homers. Struck out a lot. And again, I don't know if this is end of the season numbers, 135 Ks to 34 walks. That can be situated out though if you're a rookie. And also the other one was Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt was getting a lot of hype in the rookie of the year for the AL early in the season before Julio took over. And that's because he was a top candidate prospect for the Royals. And he's probably the best overall talent the Royals had since they traded Whit Merrifield. But yeah, he was hitting only 250. His strikeout to walk ratio wasn't very good. So I don't know.
I think with Bobby Witt, Mitch, and I think as we've seen with someone like Jose Ramirez in the splash the Guardians made this year and getting Josh Bell, baseball, obviously, if you're sandwiched between certain players, it's only going to ever help you. And I think Bregman obviously has been a beneficiary of that. And for people out there, why do you not hold Altuve to that standard? Altuve was there when they sucked, when they were one of the worst teams in baseball, and he still always just hit. I still hold a little asterisk over him because he was in the cheating thing, but I don't hold him to a standard these other players. But to your point, I think Witt wasn't able to deliver because that Royals team was A, so bad, and B, so young. There was nobody able to protect him. In terms of the J-Rod show in Seattle, Mitch, to your point, they have not had a franchise guy in so long. And anytime they do, they typically have to trade him once they blossom into an all-star and perennial MVP candidate. I think they're trying to get ahead of that now, sign him for what they think he is going to be worth, but also in 4 or 5 years, it'll look like a bargain deal if he keeps playing like he's been playing year in, year out. I have two things. I think there is another candidate, but you have to kind of see what happens this year once he plays for a potential overrated Fernando Tatis Jr. I honestly like Tatis a lot, but now that we know he has been busted for PEDs,
right?
He has been hurt. He also, Mitch, was a very, very below average field, tend to make a lot of errors at shortstop. Now there's rumors that he's going to move to the outfield in San Diego, which could be a good thing for him. He's somebody kind of on that list that you kind of have to wait and see what happens. And then finally, I went through that thread on Twitter, Mitch, when I sent you the topic. If you think Mike Trout's overrated, please, close out of the Twitter app, delete your app, and then realize what you just said. Because Mike Trout is not overrated at all. Is he injury prone? Yes, I can say he is because he is. And it sucks because he is the best player in baseball when healthy, typically every single time he's on the field. But if anybody says Mike Trout is overrated, you are so wrong. So wrong. I mean, Mitch, 3-time MVP, Rookie of the Year, 10-time All-Star, 9-time Silver Slugger, Major League Player of the Year, 2-time All-Star MVP, Wilson overall Defensive Player of the Year. He is a 303 career average, 896 RBIs, 204 stolen bases, 350 home runs. This is not an overrated player. He is, when healthy, the best player in baseball. I am not here for any of the Mike Trout being overrated slander. If you think that way, you're just mad at something and looking for something to upset people.
I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy you reminded me of that because I legit could not believe I was seeing that name in there. I also saw Juan Soto a lot. I mean, maybe, but because they were hyping him up after the Washington World Series win. But yeah, he's still very young and he's still doing what he can. Although, I think jury's still out for him. My veteran pick was Kyle Schwarber, and I get it. 46 home runs is amazing. He had 200 strikeouts this year. His batting average is like 218. He did come up in the postseason. Sometimes I'll give him that, but I just could not believe the production did not match. For me, did not match the amount of home runs that he hit. Even though the 46 home runs is nothing to sneeze at. I even saw Otani on there, which I couldn't believe.
Yeah,
which is stupid. That I will admit, going into was it 2021 was his breakout season, if I'm not mistaken, or was it 20? Okay, so
21.
that season when everybody started hyping him up at the beginning, when he started going off, I'm like, okay, I get it. Because over the last few years, I'm like, oh, he plays the field, he bats in the lineup, and he pitches. Woo! I was like, yeah, I get it. And then when he kept going that season, I was like, oh my God, I think I might have been overlooking him this entire time. He is amazing. And now he's one of my favorite players in the league. So yeah, that's the one. That's one too, where I'm just like, you say he's overrated. I just go, nah. So finally, this is the one that we didn't get to in the high school segment. And I'm mad at myself for not remembering. You didn't see this story. So there was a Virginia basketball team, a girls basketball team. There was a report of a junior varsity basketball coach, emphasis coach, who was reportedly fired after posing as a 13-year-old to play in a junior varsity contest, and she was 22 years old. So there was a report from Craig Loper that I can pull up here. He's with Wavy 10 and Fox 43 in Virginia. It said that a video surfaced on January 30th of Arlisha Boykins. This is also on NFHS.com, by the way, playing for Churchland in Portsmouth, Virginia, their JV game on January 21st against Nansemond River. According to the reports, Boykins, who we have on the picture here, attempting the free throw, you can see her in the blue uniform. She was impersonating a player, reportedly, who was away from the team for a club tournament. Wavy 10 said that Boykins, who is listed on the school's website as an instructional assistant, has been fired, along with the JV head coach and the varsity head coach. And apparently, there was a meeting conducted between Churchland officials with a decision being made to cancel the remainder of the season for both the JV and varsity girls squads. Like that's a stunt to pull if you're a junior varsity girls basketball team. How do you even blend in if you're a 22-year-old? I mean, I guess you look youthful enough, but I saw other reports here that said that she was like dominating the game, kind of like she was going out for blocks and, you know, strafing to the hoop. And I mean, I am thinking to myself, that's a heck of a stunt to try and pull off. And I was also surprised that they just decided to cancel the season. They voted to cancel the season until you realize that the team wasn't very good. They had maybe won like 2 games the entire season. So maybe the thinking was, okay, we're not good already. This is already going to bring us some negative attention. Let's just let it settle and work on next season. Everyone will forget about this till then.
I have so many questions that probably aren't even like relevant, but you answered the one. I was going to say, like, was she dominating? Because if she wasn't, you should have canceled the season then and there, because like if you're 22 years old posing as a 13-year-old and not dominating freshmen and sophomores in high school, then that's a problem. 2, you know, if she was dominating, like what was her stat line looking like? Like, are we talking like 30 points and 15 boards and 10 assists, or maybe no assists at all? Maybe she didn't pass, but that's actually crazy. And then like, who ratted her out? Who did it? Obviously, I saw in the article it said caught on video, but like how?
Yeah.
How did they know to
Well,
start?
I mean, I think it might have been like fans in the stands. I haven't checked that part of it yet, but yeah, there was like that would be the thing too. If you're even if you're in a small area like ours is, at some point somebody has to recognize that, hey, that's like it wasn't just somebody that they pulled down the street that nobody recognized. That's a coach who has worked with the team for a number of years or for a while there. Let me see if I can pull this up as well, because I have like, I mean, it's hard for me to find just video of the game itself. It's more so just like news clippings and news stories of this. And I'll try to send this if I can later on to you. But that's, in the meantime, that's all we have here on the Big Time Sports Podcast show. I'll get to what I have to say after we'll get to your thing. Obviously, I mentioned all the stuff at the top, social media stuff. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell on YouTube. Mitch, what's the fact of the day?
Mitch, we have a fun fact today.
Hmm?
In the last 12 months, we've had 2 Tom Brady retirements and 4 Carlos Correa contract agreements.
I saw, is that from Anthony Castrovins?
Anthony Castrovins.
Yeah. I saw that. No, I like Anthony. That was fun. I just saw that like maybe 5-10 minutes before you said it. That's really funny when you think about it. But yeah, that's pretty much all the time we have. Before we go, I did want to address something that has happened throughout this week, and wanted to give a shout out to a person who was a staple in the community of Strasburg for a long time. You can go to, our website even has it up here today. Gary Smith, I don't know if you know this name, Mitch, was a longtime member of the Strasburg community, was a Downton High School graduate who for 50 years was the scorebook keeper for Strasburg's boys basketball team. He passed away on Tuesday at the age of 86. Many people I've seen have had their written their condolences or, share their feelings on how great of a guy Smitty was. He was known as Smitty in the community. And it sucks to see him go, because this was a guy that was there for pretty much every Strasburg sporting event, whether it was football, basketball. He also worked as a football scoreboard operator for decades. Was even a scorebook keeper at the state tournament, and he was always there for the team. He was always there for the players, always there for the coaches. Even former coach Adam Hall, who's now at Kansas South, he had a statement put out on social media earlier on Tuesday, and he put some more stuff out on Wednesday morning. So I wanted to recognize him just before the episode ended, because Gary, we love you. We've always loved you, and hopefully you're resting in a better place, man. So that is all the time we have here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.